Welcome to the Indomitable podcast. I'm your host, Di Cerullo, and today we have another great episode that will leave you inspired. Today's guest is the indomitable Vivian Acquah. Passionate and driven, Vivian is making an impact on the world of workplace wellness and DEI. As the inclusive workplace wellness advocate, certified diversity executive, Vivian is devoted to making topics of workplace wellness and DEI more accessible for everyone. With a name that literally translates to water, Vivian has become an extinguisher of fires related to DEI, providing clients such as Heineken, LinkedIn, Google, Indeed, Deloitte, Tibco, Cargill, Swift, oh my gosh, there's a huge list, with tangible strategies for embracing inclusive changes. Additionally, she facilitates meaningful conversations about DEI through her Amplify DEI Cards initiative, which enables teams to create effective action plans for furthering their work in this area. Wow, awesome. Hello, Vivian. I am so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Dee.
Awesome. Can we, I know I went into a little bit of bio here, but can you tell us about yourself a little bit? Anything that I've missed?
I would say if people don't know me yet, I seduce people with food during my training. I have Ghanaian roots, born and raised in the Netherlands, and I started my journey because of my son Orlando, who is becoming 11 this year. The reason why is I faced maternal wall bias. And that ignited maternal wall bias, as in bullying, as in being put down, and also as in so many hardships that I had during my pregnancy. And I wanted to change the world, not only for myself, but also for his generation as well.
Yes, that is something that I very much relate to. As I mentioned ahead of time, both of my kids are neurodivergent, and I realized pretty early on that we had not come as far as I, as a parent, wanted to, from even just my experiences with schools and systems. So the fact that we're still in this place has definitely lit the spark in me as well. And the amount of work that I do around neurodiversity is just about like, I know I can do it. Like, I know I made it, but like, man, I want the world to be better for them by the time they are ready for it, you know?
Exactly.
Tell me a little bit about how you found out that you might be part of this community as well. You have like a memory that sticks out in your mind, or is it like a series of memories?
Well, I always have known that I am mild dyslexic, so that I knew, and I have misophonia. Whereas if you would call me and stand nearby public transport and talk to me, I would be having a hard time following that conversation, or during networks where I have to really zoom in to hear that conversation. Oftentimes, these conversations wear me out, but I never knew that this all falls under being neurodivergent, right?
Yes.
How I covered it, and it's a weird or funny way of explaining it. I was doing my virtual reality training where people have the privilege to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes to experience, let's say, soft trauma, but also experience microaggressions, good intentions gone bad, and so much more.
Right.
And I realized that every time that we did the neurodiversity team, that the person is autistic and the person has ADHD, and there are levels in the scenario where I could relate, but I couldn't relate. It wasn't me, and it was me.
Yes.
But then we're debriefing, when people were sharing what they saw and that they could connect, it felt like they were talking about me, but I'm not that, because how I learned in the beginning, before even diving deep into the topic of being neurodivergent, was you have these role models that amplify Forrest Gump. You have Piano Man. You have so many movies out there, whereas being neurodivergent, as in ADHD or autistic, means that you have to be a boy or a man.
Right.
And you have to respond in a way that you are not socially interactive anymore. That was the lens, that was the scope that I knew, until I realized that there's so much more to us that meets the eye, and also that the diagnoses for women, also women of color, women age, is different.
Yes.
We as women are being told at a very early age that we need to behave in a certain way. So
Mhm.
a lot of women only realize that they are neurodivergent the moment that they have kids and the kids are being diagnosed as well. So
Right.
for me, it started with that, and also after the lockdown, dealing with a FOMO, a huge FOMO, which ended in an introvert hangover. So I went to a 3-day conference,
Mhm.
full in, and afterwards feeling depleted for a whole month. My energy was low. My mood swings was higher than normal, right? And I know that we women, we have our, monthly thing going on where we change, where our mood change. But this
Mhm.
time the mood was stuck after my period. I was like,
Yeah.
no, this is not right. So I did some investigation and realized that I'm dealing with an introvert hangover. So
Mhm.
being socially active, not putting an off switch, and also being amongst people all the time, I need moments to breathe and recharge my batteries so
Yes.
that I can be social again, which is very weird with the job that I do because I am amongst people.
Mhm.
But I also know that I have to carve in some space
Yes.
to charge my batteries.
Absolutely. Anytime I have to do a conference, anytime I have to anything, I have to pack like not even just like waiting space in the beginning, but I also have to have like calm down space at the end. And I think that that's really important for parents, especially moms that are dealing with neurodivergent kids, because you
Hmm.
need to be able to demonstrate what that looks like for them. I
Yeah,
think people have it wrong. They teach us that you're supposed to be this kind of adult, this adult that
yeah.
is, can't be stopped, can't be harmed, can't be anything. And then kids get to be adults and they're like, oh, wait, well, I should be able to do this. But what I'm
Hmm.
thinking about is like, I want my kid to have the language of advocacy, like self
Yeah.
advocacy within them, right? Like, I want them to say, oh, mom's out of spoons. She is, completely burned out and she needs to sit in a dark, cold room and not have anybody around her. I feel like knowing ourselves is how we
Yeah.
teach them the best,
Yeah.
because trying to be anything is always going to lead us to
So
these sorts of stigmas. And also, like you're talking about, like Forrest Gump and like Sheldon from God, what is the Big Bang Theory and all of those things.
yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like they have found a way to sort of commercialize and monetize and sort of, I don't even like
Even
what
if
it.
you look at the Good Doctor, right? The Good Doctor,
Yes,
or the one,
yes,
I think it was neurotypical or neuro. There is a Netflix series out there that
yes,
helped me though. The Good
yeah.
Doctor and that neurotypical or typical, atypical.
Atypical, atypical. Yeah,
It,
yeah.
it, it helped me in a way to understand, okay, I seem to be high functioning, I seem to be doing this, but I
Right.
never realized that every time that people were talking to me, my mind goes 10 different loops. It's like
Yes.
take 10 different routes to help them and support them as well. And I wanted also to share something regarding the event thing or the conference thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have noticed and I have preference for conferences that have silent rooms. And I try to do my best to ask for them. Do you have a silent room? Do you have a space where I
Yes.
can recover? Or do I need to bring my headset
Right.
to recover from that? Because if they don't, then I don't often feel obliged to stay to the end, and I'll do my
Mm-hmm.
thing and then walk away, which is a bummer because then I'm not able to interact with people. And oftentimes I do put my headphone on to recover, to woosah, and then interact with people.
Yes. Yes. Silent room, brilliant. I mean, I think we all, like all of us that are neurodivergent, have like the best of the best in terms of headphones, right?
It's a lifesaver.
It's so necessary. And especially if
Yeah.
you have to do speaking gigs, because people will come up to you at the end. People will come running up to me and they'll be like, "Oh, Di, it's like you were, living in my house with me." And I'm just like, "Cool, I got this. I got," you know what I mean? And then you're sort of like forcing your brain to go a little longer, and it's just like,
I've
yeah.
made agreement with myself that I extend maybe 2 or 3 hours, but when I feel that my battery is almost depleted or almost gone,
Yes.
I do the Irish goodbye.
Yeah.
I don't always say bye,
No. Yeah.
or I say bye to people in WhatsApp, say I'm gone, bye,
Yes.
or I tell people ahead of time saying that I'm neurodivergent. I can
Yes.
stay at the event, but know that if you don't have a sign of room, then my exit will be maybe 1 or 2 hours. That's it.
Absolutely. Yep. I have to be just so clear. And I have to be so clear. I have to know what it is. I have to know where my boundaries are. And I have to
Exactly.
hold them. Because if I
Yeah.
don't, I know that I will be, you're talking about like wind down time of like a day versus like wind down time of a week. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
The introvert hangover that you're dealing with,
yes.
that you have too much, you consume too much interaction with people. I
Yes.
mean, I can do small groups, but when it's a big group and
Yeah.
also everybody's looking at me, sometimes I
Yeah.
feel, I feel a little bit, my shyness comes over. So I'm
Yeah.
introvert and my ambiverts from time to time. And when people look at me like, you're the expert, you're Vivian. Oh,
Yeah.
that's Vivian. Please
Yeah.
normalize that because I'm human. I'm
Yeah.
human. I'm
Exactly.
not an alien or a robot or,
No.
Marvel. I don't have any, I do have some superpowers, but I don't have that superpower like
Yes.
action, like
Yes.
Iron Man or so. So it's something that, I'm not always used to when people look at me, but then again, it's also the brand that I've created, right?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
you on
Well,
that
that
path.
and people's awareness of what people like us can do, right? So
Yeah.
I think that that's pretty fun as well because you
Mm-hmm.
are running into sort of stereotypes, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
there's, I mean, I don't have to tell you, but like we are
You don't
running
look
into stereotypes.
neurodivergent. You don't look ADHD, right?
Right. Oh,
I
yeah. Like,
what I
oh,
always
your kid doesn't look autistic. And you're like, what? What do you mean? Oh, I'm sorry. Kid doing autism for the lady, right? Like, what do you mean? That doesn't make any sense. But, oh,
that's also why it is so important to have different role models. So when
yes.
I talk to people, I say, well, Beyonce's sister is neurodivergent. That's
Mhm.
no. And I suspect Beyonce is as well.
I mean, obviously, how can she do all that?
When you see her video, her latest movie, and you see the way she's thinking,
Mm-hmm.
front end, middle,
Yeah.
and back,
And
and
that
play
web.
scenario,
Exactly. Yep.
that can only be a neurodivergent
That's
mind to
exactly
do.
right.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it.
You're exactly right. I would agree with you. I think that that's true because, neurotypical people are thinking in silos and they learn in a linear fashion, right? But we're thinking in webs, and all of this information is connected by a little tiny piece that you would not be able to explain to somebody outside the group, right? Like, I can't even, like, I will think of two different movies because they had the same small thing in common, right? Like, not even like the director, not something smart. Yeah.
And you label people like, okay, you're the lady with this, you're the lady with
Yep.
that. Oh, I remember you because I connect you with this movie
Yep.
or that. That's
Yes.
how I,
Yes.
sort.
Yes, exactly. Like, I will see some bit character and I'll be like, oh, last time I saw them, they were on Law and Order. You know what I mean? Or I know that that person is dating somebody, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Your brain's just constantly like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
insane. Yeah,
This is
webs.
the
I know.
first time connecting with you on this level, and I'm just like, you're me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get it. I get it.
Yeah,
I do the same. And it's
yeah.
wild because you cannot have these conversations with people in out community because there is so much foundation that exists that you would have to explain.
Nobody understands why. So I am a DEI trainer, but what
Yeah.
people don't know is I have 3 podcasts. Well, 2 active podcasts,
Yep.
live streaming as well, and
Mm-hmm.
I have different characters within me that are now being satisfied. Whereas in the workplace, I was only able to activate maybe 1 or 2
Yeah.
different roles within me, which
Mm-hmm.
led the 6 other roles depleted, inactive. And
Yeah.
we weren't always happy. We were just like, no, but you're not using the full potential of my skill.
That's
Why are
so
you
right.
doing that? Why are you doing this? Why couldn't you do that? I can do that. Why can't I do that? Right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In the workplace, another fun thing that I've found is that neurotypical people ask a lot more rhetorical questions. I
Mm.
always answer the question because I
Hmm.
assume it's a real question. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? The one that I feel like is the trickiest is why did you do it like that? Right?
Yeah.
So if you ask me, why did you do it like that? I will answer you. If I ask somebody, what, right, exactly. If I ask somebody that, I am looking for the information because I'm going to think about whether or not the way that you did it was smarter and makes more sense. But like, apparently, why did you do it like that is not a real question. It's like,
But also knowing that they don't understand how your brain works.
Yes.
So sometimes I will answer that question, and sometimes I say, well, my brain works. It's
Yes.
out of this world, out of this mind that I cannot even understand. I did it. And do you like the outcome? If you don't like the outcome, then I
Right.
would like feedback or critique or something, do something about it. And when I say that, then that's the end of it. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I didn't even realize I was missing the jokes, right? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know that I was missing the jokes. I was missing the innuendo. I have all these rules for myself about how I behave in society just so I don't mess up those little pieces.
All these things are not allowing you to be you,
That's
because
exactly right.
you are, I wouldn't say erasing yourself, but you're molding yourself to them instead of you being you and unique and you valuing you.
Yeah.
Whereas me learning, being neurodivergent, coming of age 40,
Yes. We agree that coming of age is at 40. Yes.
realizing that all this time I was misunderstood and people not realizing that I learn differently. I
Yes.
listen to audiobooks. I
That's
don't
right.
read audiobooks. I need to visualize it. I need somebody to talk to me so that I can
Right.
create a whole movie out of it just
Yes.
because somebody's talking to me.
Nope, that's exactly true. I think when I turned 40, the less I cared about that. And the way it's sort
Mhm.
of manifested in my life is
Yeah,
I am sort of employing the foreigner strategy, which is
yeah,
basically like, I will just be out about it. I'm just open about it. And if I didn't answer you the way that you expected, please just ask the question again in a different way. I will not notice or be offended. You know what I mean? Like, I just have to roll with it, because if I'm teaching somebody in that moment, cool. But like,
yeah.
I can't be small. I can't be smaller. I can't be less colorful. I can't, like, there's no version of me that is my whole
That's
self.
why I
Exactly.
am wearing what I'm
Exactly.
wearing. I have my ombre hair. I have my
Hmm.
bow. I
And
have
it is
my bow.
gorgeous and I love it. And I'm so jealous. I'm like, oh man, if I could wear pink, I would. I would wear pink if I could. uh, anyway, talk to me about how you feel that the sort of neurodiversity community intersects with the developing AI.
Mm. Oh, that's a very loaded question.
I felt like it would be a good conversation starter.
I mean, I'll share things from my insights and my perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because in the beginning, when AI started, I was just like, okay, my mind already thinks of, this alternative of this scenario, this scenario, right? And having that access to summarize conversations like this conversation as well, but also to strategize, also to read, because oftentimes when people send me, let's say, text that is not sexy or a little bit boring,
Mm-hmm.
using AI tools to read it out loud for me makes the information comes alive. And for
Yes.
me, my brain goes all over the place, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I see it as a positive for
Mm-hmm.
everybody to have access to AI, but then again, we also need to have an ethical compass
Yes.
when you do that,
Agree.
because I've also seen the other side being misused and being mistreated, whereas I find it dangerous where people could actually copy my voice and behave like I am, right? It's not me. So as long as AI is being used ethical, I can see it advancing people when they have good training regarding AI and regarding the use of using AI for good. I don't see any harm in doing that.
I often worry about AI being developed without enough voices in the room that
Mm,
will
yeah,
sort of,
yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
that's probably my biggest concern. It's my concern with all tech, really. All
yeah.
tech that could harm humanity. The thing that I worry the most about is that there aren't enough people in the room
Yeah.
having that conversation together. But what I'm more concerned about is the fact that we aren't in the room where those conversations and those decisions are being made. I think
Hmm.
that that is a lot more harmful.
Yeah.
It's not just the IP that I worry about. It's the harm, right?
And that's also one of the reasons why I mentioned the word ethic, right? Because it
Yes,
connects to
that's right.
the ethics of AI. And AI, I think that I don't remember her name. It was a black woman, a lady from Google. It was in the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of
Yep,
lockdown. She was fired because she was
that's
talking
right.
about we need to be very careful about using this technology because it can diminish, it can
Yes,
overlook a lot of people, right? It can also make
right.
pre-assumptions that already are alive within the human part. So if
That's
we
right.
copy that and amplify that, that could
Right.
create a worse, situation where maybe I myself, if I'm entering a building, I would be labeled as the thief or somebody to look
Right.
out for,
Right.
somebody that should not be entering this building, all because of AI. So we need to be really careful about that.
Yes, I completely agree. I know exactly who you're talking about. She did that amazing documentary called Coded Bias. And I thought
Yeah.
that, like, I remember thinking at the time, as we learn less and less history, as we learn less and less from, those who've sort of come before us, when we have sort of these fast fashion and fast, like, conversations, and, oh, you can't tell anybody anything unless you can say it in 3 seconds or less, I think to myself, how much of our, our stereotypes, our stigmatizations, how many of those things are just being put into the system as part of, oh, this is the way things truly are, rather than examining those things and wondering, oh, does that need to live there? Does that need to exist like that? Have I thought about this at all? It's tremendous to me that, of course, the human brain likes to be right. So we will continue to believe that we are right about others, even when they aren't right about us. Do you know what I mean? I think that like,
Names now. Timnit Gebru, that's
yeah,
the lady
right.
from
Yes,
Google.
Dr. Gebru, that's right.
I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing her name right because the woman who was the lead in Coded Bias, her name is Joy
Mm-hmm.
La Wimi. I hope that I'm pronouncing her name right.
That's
But look
right.
her
Yep.
Coded Bias is a must watch movie that everybody needs to learn about.
No,
Definitely.
absolutely. Absolutely. Especially when we think about the range of humans that exist,
Mm-hmm.
while not,
Yeah.
you're not even talking about just Americans. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You put all of these people into boxes based on the American system. What
Yeah.
else lives here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not looking at any of the intersections of identity when you do that.
Exactly.
It's tremendous
Exactly.
to me. Um,
Exactly.
Especially since, like, you think about who's doing that work, and more often than not, they're just a certain kind of person. So they're going to think a
Mhm.
certain kind of person, autism looks like this. And for a
Yeah.
certain kind of person, ADHD looks like this. And it is
Exactly.
so harmful because that has always been the way that it was defined and described. And I mean, even the roots of how autism was first, you know, I don't want to say discovered because that's not right, but like the first
Mhm.
writings about
Mhm.
autism only included boys. It could only be
Yeah.
boys. It could only be white boys. And to this day, the people who are diagnosed the fastest are wealthy white boy children.
Yeah.
Fastest.
Yeah.
And I mean, and then if you think about how hard it is for women and people of color, and especially black women and queer women, to
Yeah.
become diagnosed so much faster than that, what are they doing? They're
It's
saying
a
it's
journey.
something
And
else. It's
also
this.
if you have the funds, right? If you don't
Right.
have the funds, and
Mhm.
also
That's
me
right.
growing up in a culture where I had to act normal and
Yes.
realizing that my normal is different, that's a
Yes.
whole new ball game. So what I'm trying to do now with our child, because I grew up not knowing that I was neurodivergent, not being
Mhm.
allowed to be neurodivergent as well.
Right.
And I
Right.
am trying to raise, together with my partner, trying to raise our child that I want him to be free. I want him to know
Yes.
that when he
Yes.
has lava from time to time, that we,
Mhm.
go back,
Yep.
think about how we can remove the edges from the lava or go through the
Yes.
lava so that we can recover from that. And also to realize that sometimes we don't need to be with people. Sometimes we don't need to respond at
Yes.
that moment because we need some recovering time or processing
Yes.
time to process that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think self advocacy is the
Yeah.
thing that is the most important about what we teach them about being themselves. I think
Yeah.
my 9-year-old just finished 3rd grade, and his teacher was reporting to me that he is like the neurodiversity expert in his class. So like he'll be talking to
Where
his
did he get that from?
I know, right? Like he'll be sitting at circle time, I guess, and just telling, his friends, how things are going with his therapist and and I'm just sitting here like, well, that is what it is. And hopefully if even one other kid hears him and says, "Oh, maybe me too," before they hear from some silly adult who says, "Oh, you should, you're being too lenient with them and that's the problem."
Yeah.
And there are so many versions of that, especially when we consider the experts who've had no training in neurodiversity.
That's why the virtual reality, it gives people who, first of all, maybe the parents or maybe caregivers, it gives them a sense of understanding why you shouldn't be able to remove somebody's headphone when they are recovering, because too often
Yes.
the
Yes.
headphones are removed, or too often we are telling them like, behave normal. But
Yes.
what if this is my normal, right?
Yes.
And gives people a sense of understanding how
Mm-hmm.
to support their loved one, how to support the other person who is neurodivergent. It's that powerful.
Wow. Well, tell me more about it. So how was it developed?
Yeah. So a friend of mine who does positive psychology, she was talking to another friend of hers, and this person was really active in virtual reality and told her like, you've been complaining or you've been talking about how DEI isn't felt, but have you tried virtual reality? And that's how things got connected, where together with that business partner, they created different scenarios
Mm-hmm.
so that people can go through the different things that are being encountered. So we have neurodivergence, we have racism, we have sexism, we have scenarios related to the LGBT community, so transgender,
Mm-hmm.
we have language barriers, but we also have, what happens at a meeting where you'll see the different dynamics between men and women within a meeting being overlooked or overtalked, or being assumed that since you are a woman you can write it right, or you can do the meeting notes right. So all these things, and each scenario is about the longest is 7 minutes and the shortest one is 4 minutes, and within those 4 minutes we have at least 100 things that people can pick on. The only
Hmm.
thing is my lens and your lens differs. So
Yeah.
you catch certain things that you can relate to, and you bring that back and see how it feels. People have shared with me that walking in somebody else's shoes, it has given them that distaste of feeling exclusion, but also we have found a way to translate good intention
Mm-hmm.
gone back,
Yes.
perceived, because oftentimes that's also a personal thing, right? When you think of a manager who's doing their best to do that, to have the best intention, which I hope,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not always the good intention that somebody else perceived that. So different scenarios, different reactions. For the people that are caregivers, parents, they love the scenarios that we share, because finally they have an understanding. They had a suspicion and they have more understanding, but now, one person shared that they will never ever remove the headphone
Mm-hmm.
of their step child. And another person, a HR professional who did the training, disclosed this with her friend. And then that friend shared a post on LinkedIn saying that this is so out of this world that this is happening. And finally, I have a way to explain and show what I feel, because oftentimes it feels like a mystery. It feels like out of this world when explaining to somebody else that this is how your mind works and this is what I need, and I need some me time. I'm not always
Yeah.
assertive. I can be, but I'm
Right.
not always assertive. I'm not always outgoing. I can be sensitive. I try to guard myself, but I can be sensitive about certain things, right? Things are challenging when I'm having a courageous conversation. I need a moment to process, because if I react from my first response, you need first responders.
Right. No, agree.
No react from that first responder active, right? So
Right.
it's helpful to have movies, Disney movies like Dory. I sometimes explain to other people like I sometimes am Dory,
Yes.
or Inside Out. That's
Hmm.
also to explain the emotions. And also with my child, there is so much content available nowadays in this day and age where you can explain neurodiversity, not only for
Yes.
children, but also for adults who need some more information or some more visuals or some more context to understand
Yeah.
that.
It's funny that you brought up Dory. We were watching Finding Dory this weekend with my kids, and they are 9 and 6. And
Yeah,
so I was watching, and I'm watching the fish parents have the
yeah,
conversation about like, how will she be? Do you think she can
yeah,
survive on her own? Do you think that like, and just going from that stage of overprotectiveness and
yeah.
fear and like wanting to protect them from it all to finding ways that she can maybe find herself
Mm-hmm.
and grow a little bit away from them. I'm just bawling through the entire thing, and I'm just like, I didn't notice that, because you don't think about it that way until you're having those conversations, and then you see what they were telling you and you're like, oh my god,
Yeah,
yes. Oh,
yeah,
look at that.
yeah,
Casual conversations that are
yeah,
basically just repeating nonsense that we've heard throughout time
yeah,
does no one any good, shockingly. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Just like, no, you're completely right. There have been so many
I had the
opportunities.
same revelation when I binge watched The Good Doctor,
Hmm.
where was being the good doctor who has autism, right? When
Right.
he was being overprotective and also showing that he can do it. He has this
Yeah.
quirkiness, or this,
Yeah.
this way of thinking, but we need to find ways to socialize with those people that because before I was biased. Before I thought that people who I thought that had that Forrest Gump resemblance,
Mm.
I knew that they weren't, making that connection with me.
Hmm.
So I didn't make the effort to make a connection with them.
Right.
And going through that virtual reality, I was confronted hardcore with my own bias. Like, why am I not doing that?
Right. Right.
Have I done my best? Have I invited them to dance? And if they say no, then respect them, at least include them in the conversation.
It makes me wonder about how many of us weren't able to find ourselves within the community
Mm,
specifically because
yeah,
of being taught that stigma. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, I
yeah.
wonder about sort of the dual consciousness of
Hmm.
being raised a certain way to look at people, look at those archetypes, the Forrest Gumps and the good doctor and all of those people as sort of not the same as us,
Yeah,
not whole people in the way that we are whole people. And
yeah,
I think that I wonder how many of us haven't found our way to the community as a result of that, just not being
yeah.
able to see themselves in the other person.
Many. And that's why I talk about there are so many women out there who are neurodivergent, like
Yes.
Solange, the singer Billie Eilish also
Hmm.
talked about
Yep.
her having tics, right?
Right.
And Daryl Hannah is
Hmm.
also a person who has neurodivergent, and my suspicion of Beyonce being neurodivergent,
Now
right?
that
So
you've shared it with me, I am also suspicious. I agree about Beyonce. I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what it is. All this
if
time,
you have
Beyonce.
seen her movie and her way of processing
Yes.
how she came
Yes.
to that creation,
Yes.
then you know that she
That is
has
so funny.
elements of being neurodivergent. Period.
Totally, because we have a specific way of talking that we can recognize within each other. And
Yeah.
as an example, just when I got my first like 4-star review on a book I wrote, and she
Mm-hmm.
was like, she should have had a better editor so she was more coherent. And I laughed when I got that. I know, but I wasn't hurt. And yet, so many people who were neurodivergent were like, you're my favorite author. And I thought it was funny because there's a certain way that we speak and a certain way that we understand information and a certain way that we explain it to people and talk through a story that
Mm-hmm.
probably is completely incoherent to people who don't process information that way. So I
Yeah.
always think I'll see someone and I'll see how they're talking or how they're thinking about things. I'll be like, ooh, I know exactly what that is. And people will be
Mhm.
like, you can't know.
I sometimes have to close my
I
mouth
know. I know.
I have a suspicion, like,
I
there's
know, or I'll see it and I'll see like the parent trying to like yell them out of it. And I'm just like, ooh, is it today? Is today the day that I need to be stupid and say something to the parent? I don't know. I don't know how that's going to go. I swear that's the biggest thing. That's one of the biggest hardships of my life, is just being like, should I say something? Or should I just make comments about my own kid doing that behavior and finding out that, this is what's going, like, you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, so often I'm just like,
Have you come to a realization that the people around you, friends,
yes,
have elements of being neurodivergent? I have.
yes.
I'm just baffled. Like, okay, apparently there is a magnet that
We
we
all
are.
move in packs. Yeah, exactly. We all move in packs of friends like that. So every time
Yeah.
a friend comes to me at 40 now and they're like,
Mm.
oh, Di, I was just diagnosed ADHD. And I'm like, that took a long time. Like, I've had a mental diagnosis for you since we were 7.
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But this conversation feels so weird because it's just like, are we talking about me? Because this.
Well, I mean, people like me know me right away. They're just like, oh, I know exactly what's up with you. And it's like, good, perfect. Let's move forward. Let's talk about other things then, I wonder about why there is so much denial in parents or, let's say, medical professionals or any of those people that are sort of said to be experts. I wonder why they need to believe that we aren't whole people. I wonder why that's the stigma.
It's not science. There are not that many research available
Right.
for those who believe in science. For those who believe in, it's not scientifically proved.
Right.
That's one thing, but also what isn't helpful is the media isn't helpful normalizing how neurodivergent can look like. Because
Yes.
if we only see one particular gender in different ages and we see
Yep.
it only for the Caucasian side, then
Yep.
it says to us in a way we can be neurodivergent because that's not what
That's
is
not who
being.
we are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed really early because I grew up in foster care. So when you do that, they put you through like a series of tests that because they have to keep all of that information. I'm different on that in that way. Like a lot of times women will find out much later than I found out, but it
Yeah.
didn't help. Right, right. But it didn't help because the people around me still didn't know what that was. Right? So like the teachers I had or the adults in my life, they
Yeah.
didn't know what that meant. So they would be like, there would be that denial of, oh,
Yeah.
you can't be ADHD. Only boys can be ADHD and you can sit
Exactly.
still. You can't be
Exactly.
this. You can't, it's not you. You've been misdiagnosed. Like that pushback against, I can't be that, is the thing that made me that expert over time. Having to
Yeah.
explain over and over and over again, oh no, see, what's going on with him is what's going on with me. Right? Like, and just having people be like, no, he is this, you are defiant. He
Yeah.
is ADHD, you are manipulative. He
You
is
are not.
autistic, right? You are annoying, right? Like, he can't stop talking about dinosaurs, you can't stop talking about dinosaurs, but it's not the same because you're a girl. And I would be like, this does not sound like science, right? Like, and I will be perfectly honest with you, we might have moved the needle a little bit, but I still run into that all the time. I still run into that exact same, oh, you shouldn't tell people he's autistic because you can't tell by looking at him. And I'm like, how does that help him? How does that,
It's also, it's also the label, right? Because in the beginning I was
label
scared
stigma. Yep.
labeling myself like I'm neurodivergent. Will people look differently at me? And also when it comes to resumes or CVs, I've had occasions where people skip me because I might be some, right? So I I hope to see a world where even when we know that of ourselves, that we can disclose it and that our environment can support us for us to be our best selves. That's what I hope.
I wish they'd stop asking on job applications if they don't have the information about what it means, right? If they're not teaching managers and hiring managers, especially what it means, then they shouldn't be asking. Because if you are going to disclude someone like me, then you don't know that we make our careers a huge part of our identity, and we probably know more about the subject matter than any 10 people in the room. Like it's right, it's bananas to me. So I'm constantly like, why is this on the job application if probably people don't know what it is? Or you know what I mean? Because if you're excluding those people, then you are making your team less awesome. And people don't know that, and that stuns me, you know?
It shows up in so many different variations that it's really a rainbow when it comes to all the different variations and the levels of being neurodivergent as well.
Absolutely. About what exists and you know, what supports they need in order to be. And I am more functional on one day. We call it a green dot day. And then there will be days when I'm just like, oh no, whatever Monday die signed us up for is not going to hold for Friday die. That's not going to work for, you know what I mean? It's just like, if I get like really excited about something, oh yeah, definitely. I'll totally take a meeting at 5 p.m. on a Friday. No, that's not real. And that has been my biggest challenge, is like being real with myself, right? Like being real and taking care of myself in the way that I would take care of other people. So anytime somebody's like,
not too early because you have a brainstorm or you got a brain wave, right?
Yes. No, absolutely. You're absolutely right. I do that all the time. So I'll say to myself, oh, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
Exactly.
So you were talking about sort of the good intentions of people, right? In workplaces and all of those sorts of spaces. I wonder about, and it's the exact same conversation with racism, right? I wonder a lot about when we say, oh, expect good intentions or assume good intentions, right? They say that all the time. That seems to be connected with this concept of politeness that usually is, do you know what I mean?
It seems
like it's there to make things nice, but not there to make things kind. Does that make sense? Like,
it's also about holding space for somebody else and being empathetic for them, right? Because if we don't do that or don't say that, I would assume that the majority of the people that I interact with, that they have good intentions. Because if they don't, then they will burn in some other way or karma will happen, right? So that's why what I assume, that they do things out of good intention. Whether how I perceive it, that's a different way. Unless somebody and I can see the bad intention, then that's when a different side of Vivian. Vivian can respond with, verbal. I'm gonna type a letter.
Right.
That's where you get
delete it many times.
The tyrant version, but who is strategic as well and polite, but you'll get a tyrant of me. Yeah.
Right. You'll get as I said in my previous email.
Exactly that version. Because apparently you don't listen when I talk to you, so I have to, address you in a certain way and make sure that you do understand me.
You know what has been a really our brains, neurodivergent brains, are designed for pattern recognition, right? Like maximum pattern recognition, usually for just like fast thinking, right? I wonder about people because I will see these patterns and I'm able to sort of predict how that behavior will go. So sometimes when I'm noticing somebody not having great intentions, I will have to just be like, okay, now you've got mask die. I can't lean into my pettiness all the time, but it's always sort of on low simmer, right?
Also, one of the things why the virtual reality thing, you cannot fool people. 95% of the people will unmask, remove the layers from themselves. And after that, we are able to talk with each other on a human level. So oftentimes, especially when leaders approach me, they approach me with their title, they approach me in a certain way, and I'm just like, okay, let me see how we are going to talk. After you have wear that headphone or the head mask and headset, and I can see that human to human connection. And I sometimes tell them, like, you see what's happening right now. We have just met only once, and you're already sharing something that I don't think that you would normally share in the first interaction.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I think that I think a lot of times people walk in with their own perceptions that
Mm-hmm.
I think that having a tool the way you have a tool
Mm-hmm.
is very, very interesting and probably brings conversation to a new level,
Yeah.
because a lot of times people will come to me with their own sort of
Yeah.
awarenesses, their own understandings of who I am, but not only just who I am and whether I have a right to say what I'm saying, but
Mm-hmm.
also whether or not they're going to believe what I have to say right away.
Exactly.
Right. So, like,
Exactly.
they'll already know. And when I
Mm-hmm.
see that they're just there to just, I'm not really here, then I don't put all that effort into it, because I know they don't care what I say. They
Yeah.
already think that they're right. They already assume that they know better than me on a subject that doesn't impact them at all. And yet they're just totally not, they're just, oh, whatever, that's fine with me. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's really fascinating, because if you're not willing to learn from people who aren't like you, what are you doing? like what are you even, why are we here? I have other things to do. I don't have to be here having this discussion.
True. That was me before doing the coaching training.
Yeah.
Doing the coaching training, I realized that I need to hold space and sometimes let my bias, my assumptions, the
Mm-hmm.
thoughts that run through my mind, I need to let them simmer and marinate, because is my thought really real?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it me talking in a biased way that isn't helpful? I have my community where
Yeah.
I will call them afterwards and say, do you know what happened? This
Oh my
happened the
God.
other day.
Immediately. Yes. I'm texting right now.
In that time and space, I need to show up as neutral as possible, because I'm
Yes.
there to support them and facilitate them. And of course, there are often moments where I will turn around the mirror so that they have a coachable moment or a teachable moment and a lesson learned from that as well.
Yes. And I mean, there's also rejection sensitivity, right? We'll be looking at that rejection on their faces, and we'll have to just be like, that's not about you.
Yeah.
That's just, it's not about, like,
I'll just ask plainly. I'll just ask, I'm seeing something on your
yeah,
face. Can you
yeah.
help me? Can you
I'm getting
demystify it?
this feeling from you. You want to talk about why this is? Or
Yeah.
I think another thing that's really effective in these types of conversations with, like, businesses, especially in a group,
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
that I will have a conversation, right? If I talk at people, they don't get it. But if I'm
Mm,
having a conversation throughout, I'm
exactly.
noticing people sort of seeing
Yeah.
themselves in my
Yeah.
conversation, and then they
Mhm.
get more invested in what I'm
Yeah.
saying. So I always
Yeah.
have to put a Q&A at the end of every talk I give, because of course at the end it's always like somebody will raise their hand and be like, "Oh my God, I think I'm ADHD." And you're like,
Yeah.
like, finger
Yeah.
guns, like,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? So yeah, I'm so glad you are out in the world doing exactly this, because it's so necessary. I mean, a
It
lot of
is.
times people don't think, I mean, I do tech and biotech for the most part, and people
Mhm.
will be like, oh, well, we know a lot about autism in biotech spaces or tech spaces. And it's like,
No.
I don't think you do. Like,
No.
I don't think you do. Like, I think that you do, and I get why you think that, but that's
Mhm.
because of stereotypes of the
Yeah.
issue, not the
Yeah.
reality of the issue, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really fascinating. I'm glad that you do that work. What is one of the wildest things you've learned in doing these conversations? Like, what have you learned that was interesting about either neurodiversity or about misunderstandings of neurodiversity?
It's more of the miseducation of myself,
Mm.
and the miseducation of other people, right? When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to neurodiversity, I have been seeing more and more books about this topic, also written by women,
Mm.
where it's mind blowing how neurodiversity is all contained into one umbrella term, where even just ADHD on its own, it's a
Mm-hmm.
huge world. And then being
Yes.
faced with that, um I also realized that some people are born with it, some
Mm-hmm.
people become neurodivergent because of an accident or because something happened
Right.
to them.
Right.
And there are so many levels of being neurodivergent, and what I'm hoping for, what I need in the workplace environment, not only the understanding of people, but the workplace offices, buildings are killing people who are neurodivergent. I
Yes.
need sunlight, or at
Yes.
least something that mimics sunlight. I need
Yeah.
to be able to look outside.
Oh my
I need
God.
to be
Open
able
floor
to be,
plans. Why?
I need to be able to feel like I am creative instead of depleted. So open offices for me was a hell because there was always one or two colleagues that would hijack the whole space with a conversation, what they did in the weekend. And I'm just like, I'm not interested. I don't want to know. Don't want to know.
Yeah, but if you got your headphones on and you're paying attention to your work, next thing you know that you're not part of the group and you're like,
exactly.
What do you want it to be? Right? Like, why don't you tell me what the goals are of my personhood and I'll show up and I'll check those boxes. Like, why is it a big secret?
You're not a robot.
Yeah, right? It's a big secret.
Yeah.
And so tell me, how can people follow you or support you and give you awesome love and attention for your work?
Definitely. The easiest way is through LinkedIn. So you can find me, Vivian Acquah, through LinkedIn, where I share my quirkiness, but also share, what other people think about this whole experience regarding virtual reality. And too oftentimes, it's not easy to explain what it means. So there is a video in my LinkedIn profile in the future section where you can see the video and see just what it does and why this is the best thing so far to demystify unconscious biases, whether it's from you or from somebody else, seeing good intention gone bad, microaggression, so many other things. And another beautiful thing is you are confronting yourself. So it's not me pointing my finger towards you saying that you have been bad or you're doing so bad, why are you biased about this? No, you are confronting yourself in a loving way, hopefully, so that you can understand what you can do to move the needle.
Beautiful. Any other links or anything that we should share?
My website, amplifydei.com. I have a co-founder podcast, the Global Inclusion in Practice.
Yep.
Where I talk about the behind story of being a DEI practitioner, because oftentimes DEI is glamorized, right?
Yeah.
Until people out.
Glamorized or demonized. We'll have to that's a different episode.
But the easiest thing and say or let me know what your thoughts are regarding this conversation.
Perfect. Y'all, thank you for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and don't forget to subscribe to the Indomitable podcast for more incredible stories of humaning. Remember, my new book, Indomitable, a foster care story, is available wherever you get your books. Thank you to all of my Indomitable friends who came out to support me in Houston, Texas, and thank you for sharing your stories with me. If you have any upcoming events you'd like me to bring the Indomitable experience to, please submit a request via our website. And finally, as ever, I am so happy you are here in community with me. And remember, together we are truly indomitable. Have a great week, everybody. Take care.